Alice has stopped dancing and is staring too, open-mouthed and drooling slightly. Keep still, he orders, and slowly he inserts his thumb
Hello there.
inside me, rotating it around and around, stroking the front wall of my vagina. No fisting, you say? Anything else you object to? I agree to the fisting, but I'd really like to claim your ass.
So looking over the Don Bluth films, I remember I already reviewed some of them in the past. I reviewed the Land Before Time movies years ago, and even revisited them not too long ago, all hail our Lord and Savior Spike Christ. But I also reviewed the movie Thumbelina as well. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, Thumbelina was actually the very first movie I ever reviewed. I know the upload date doesn't exactly confirm that, but I did actually make that video in 2015, but didn't get around to uploading it until around December of 2016. I don't even remember how that happened, so don't ask me. I think like a lot of YouTubers, I look back on a lot of my old reviews and cringe every time, from their terrible camera and audio quality to my stiff and awkward deliveries.
Anybody who grew up in the 90s, anyone who grew up in the 80s and 90s and seen those type of movies, will tell you that Don Bluth has been a huge part of their childhood. And yeah, he was a huge part of my childhood. I love a lot of his movies. I love The Land Before Time. I like The Secret of Nim. I like American Tail. I don't kind of like All Those Go to Heaven. Here. I have Anastasia on VHS right here to prove it.
Wow. That was shit.
Did you guys know that I actually used a stool as my camera tripod? Yeah, that's how cheap my setup was back in the day. But this video? Oh, don't get me started.
If I could trace back to the moment where I got started.
At first, I was pretty ashamed of my older videos, especially when some crazy guy literally made it his life mission for 3 years to try and drag my name through the mud, all because he hated one of those older videos that I don't care about anymore.
I just don't want people to continue to spread hate about me. I can't fucking take it anymore. This is literally driving me insane.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
This is serious.
I know.
But other YouTubers reminded me that not only is it expected you'd cringe at your older content, but it's perfectly normal. And not to let comments like this really get to you because, again, those videos don't really reflect how you are now. So I thought it might be a cool idea to go back and re-review some of the older movies that I haven't seen in years. Maybe they're better than I gave credit for back then. Or maybe they deserved a bigger beating than they got. Point is, this could also be a great opportunity to showcase just how far I've come in the years since starting YouTube. So, why not start this RaisorBlade renaissance with the very first movie I ever reviewed, Don Bluth's Thumbelina. So, I sat down, rewatched it with both my sister and her 6 and 7-year-old kids, and when it was over, I kid you not, I stood up from the chair, looked right at the TV screen, and shouted, "That was fucking horrible!" Right in front of the kids, made them cry. They liked it, but I don't care what kids think. Thumbelina is actually really bad. There's so much obnoxious kitty crap in this movie that makes you want to put a bullet through your skull. You thought A Troll in Central Park was bad? Well, it still is, but this is pretty bad too. While A Troll in Central Park is terrible, at the very least it is an original concept. With a good script and story, that movie might have worked and could have even been a timeless original like An American Tail or The Land Before Time. But Thumbelina is so blatantly trying to be like Disney. And I know that sounds weird considering Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were both ex-Disney animators, but by the 90s, they had proven that they were able to make their own animated films with a distinct style that was reminiscent of older Disney films, but not exactly like Disney. Would you look at The Secret of Nim and say it's a Disney film? Definitely not. It's way too dark and serious for what Disney was known for at the time. An American Tail? Closer, but still felt like its own thing. And The Land Before Time is the same way. Hell, even some of the weaker stuff like All Dogs Go to Heaven or even A Troll in Central Park feel like they were trying to deviate away from the Disney style. But Thumbelina just feels so Disney-fied, so to speak. Like, it definitely fits in that niche of 90s animated films that were trying really hard to be like Disney. Quest for Camelot, Swan Princess, even Anastasia later down the line, also made by Don, would fit in this niche. The movie is based on a Hans Christian Andersen story, and it's about a young, red-haired girl voiced by Jodie Benson of all people. Pretty coincidental, huh? Oh, and the main character falls in love with a prince almost immediately? Again, how weird is that? By this point, Don Bluth had proven that he didn't have to be like Disney to be successful. If anything, Disney was actually inspired by what he was doing. You could actually argue that Don Bluth helped start off the Disney Renaissance. his movies, which felt like older Disney movies, were doing super well both critically and financially. Disney, on the other hand, sunk a huge amount of money into The Black Cauldron, which bombed spectacularly. So, I know it's weird to accuse Don of ripping off Disney, when actually he was the one who inspired them to do this stuff. Even though all Don was doing was what Disney did a long time ago, so it's like a weird cycle that just never ends. But despite the cycle, Don has proven that he didn't need to be like Disney, and yet here he is trying to be like Disney. With that being said though, it probably was more Warner Brothers forcing him to do this stuff, because in the 90s, it was no secret that Don was constantly selling out to producers just so he could make these movies happen. As a matter of fact, it was even reported that in test screenings for this film, Warner Brothers actually put the Disney logo in front of the movie to fool audiences into believing that they were actually watching a Disney movie. And it actually worked. And if that is actually the truth, then do I need to say more? I'm not explaining why this movie is total garbage though. This film's plot is so freaking repetitive and the pacing is so weird. It takes over 20 minutes in this 86-minute movie just to get the main plot started. And then, it's just Thumbelina going from place to place, meeting some conniving douchebag, they fall in love with either her looks or her beautiful voice, she's forced to sing for that douchebag, then shenanigans happen that force her to go to the next person. This happens like 5 fucking times in the movie. Yeah, I know that's how the original story is, but fun fact, critics hated the original story as well back in the day. Yeah, apparently the criticism for Thumbelina was so harsh that Hans Andersen actually took a whole year to release another story, which would later go on to be The Little Mermaid. But okay, critics from over 200 years ago is one thing. It doesn't change the fact that this story is just terribly disjointed. Yeah, can we also talk about how this movie has practically no focus? There's this huge chunk in the middle of the film that just completely ignores Thumbelina. She completely disappears from her own movie for a huge chunk of time, and in this chunk of time, so much happens. The prince gets frozen, Giacomo gets his wing hurt, the toad steals the beetle's wings, the beetle just finds the prince frozen, and this shit is so damn convenient, even the beetle mentions that.
Ah! The prince! Somebody up there loves me!
Yeah, lazy ass writer. Speaking of Frozen, can we talk about how this movie goes from the end of summer to autumn, then to winter, and then finally to spring in the span of days? Unless this is a nuclear winter, I'm calling bullshit on that. And if you're gonna comment that this is a kid's movie and I need to leave it alone, then may I redirect you to Dumbsville video about why that makes you a fucking idiot. This movie was made by adults. Competent adults who have made good stuff before. There is a standard to what these people specifically can do, so when they fail, it's important to hold them accountable for their failure, regardless of who the target audience is. And if your only defense for this movie is, it's for kids, then you're basically admitting that you don't care about the film's quality, or believe that kids deserve to have good movies made for themselves. Even Don himself believes that kids deserve better, so shut up! The songs in this movie are kind of a mixed bag overall. Some of the songs are actually kind of nice, and a lot of that is because of the talent singing behind them. Jodie Benson's casting may have been inspired by one specific movie, don't know what it is, but she's still Jodie Benson nonetheless. Every time she opens her mouth to sing, it's genuinely beautiful. So if you can look past the very cheesy lyrics in these songs, songs like Let Me Be Your Wings and Soon might actually be very pleasant for you. But then you have Mary the Mole. Easily one of the most infamous songs in animation history, what with being the first to ever win a Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Song, and up until the Emoji Movie in 2017, being the only animated film to ever win one, period. A common misconception is that the song is bad because of the message it presents, which is to marry someone because of how successful they are. But when you really think about it, there's lots of great songs from musicals and animated films out there with bad messages. Shiny from Moana is also about owning lots of valuable objects and outward appearances. Gaston is about how much of a badass Gaston is, which ends up inflating his ego and making him into a douchebag. Be prepared? Fucking murder! But damn it, it's a banger nonetheless! So yeah, the message of the song isn't what makes it bad. What does make it bad, however, is that it's terribly written, terribly sung, not pleasant to listen to, very short, which arguably would be a good thing in this instance, and on top of all that, doesn't really serve much of a purpose. Thumbelina is such a hopeless cuck of a character that she'd probably just settle for marrying the mole anyway, which I know doesn't make much sense, but she's constantly losing hope all the time in this movie. Her just settling for someone who can take care of her is honestly pretty believable. So, with slight retooling, you can make it so where Thumbelina didn't need a song to tell her to do this. Giacomo is fucking awful. He's super annoying and his existence actively hurts the film. In the original story, he doesn't appear until near the end where he's found in the mole's hole with the broken wing. But in this movie, he's the narrator of the story, which does make sense since in the original story, it's implied the Swallow is the one telling the story to Hans Christian Andersen in the first place. But here's the thing, in the movie, he's a swallow that can fly. And in a movie where the main character is lost and trying to find her way home, what I'm trying to say is Giacomo could easily just fly Thumbelina home whenever he felt like it. This massive plot hole is just lingering over this movie the entire time. Every time Thumbelina bitches about going home, I'm just screaming, oh gee, wouldn't it be great if you could just fly home whenever you want? Oh, wait a minute! Well, okay, maybe Thumbelina's too big for him to carry. Did you ever think about that? I don't have to because Giacomo literally carries Thumbelina to the Vale of the Fairies at the end of the movie. Giacomo could have easily solved this problem if he wasn't such a fucking imbecile.
I'm cold, I'm lost, and I'm hungry. And the beetle says I'm ugly. I'm a first world tragedy. It's not okay.
Does Prince Cornelius think you are ugly?
No, he thinks I'm beautiful.
And so you are.
That's right, little girls. Why form your own self-confidence when you can just have a rich, handsome man tell you that you're worth it? That's always a great idea. To some people, like my sister, this movie might be a perfectly serviceable film for little kids. But for me, I know how good Don Bluth movies can be. There's a standard, and this is not it. While the animation and voice acting is genuinely great, the story and pacing is shit. The messaging is arguably dangerous, especially for little girls. The songs sometimes can be pretty good, but other times they're needless and don't offer much to the story. I think perhaps this movie's biggest issue is that it feels outdated, even for its time. Movies like Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid have shown that these fairy tale adaptations have evolved over time. What worked in the 50s and 60s just don't work anymore, and Thumbelina really feels like a movie from that time period. If Thumbelina was released back then, maybe it'd be considered as some masterpiece in some regard, but by 1994 standards, audiences had seen just how good modern animated movies can be. And in 3 short months following this film's release, the world of animation would be changed forever with the game-changing Lion King. Like the other early 90s Don Bluth films, Thumbelina would sadly crash and burn. Critics hated it, audiences hated it unless they were being duped that it was Disney, and it would once again put Don and Gary in a rough place. Soon enough, they would find a place at MGM. But that is a video for another day. As for these older reviews, which one of these would you like for me to revisit? Let me know what you'd like to see. Special thanks to all of my new Patreons, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. So stay awesome, guys, and as always, rock on.
Never met, but you act like we never got too wasted in the bathroom of your parents' house. Now you